Welcome, everyone. Our meeting is called to order, and if you would, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, and seeing that we have no public comments, we will move right on to a presentation by the Cobb County Development Authority. So, Mr. Hungerford, Mr. Jeter, if you will please come forward and make your presentation, and any others that you would like to bring with you.
Good morning. I'm Nelson Jeter, the Executive Director for the Development Authority of Cobb County, and we're here to bring good news about a very exciting project that you reviewed about 18 months ago, but the project has expanded and we have an exciting tenant. I'd like to introduce Mr. Chuck Palmer from Troutman and Sanders, who will serve as bond counsel for both the developer and the tenant. Mr. Palmer.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Palmer at Troutman Sanders. Let me start off by saying, and I told the chairman this earlier, my mother was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, and my grandfather was superintendent of schools in Floyd County for about 20 years, so it means a lot to any community. And I'm excited to be here. This project, y'all heard, as Nelson mentioned, heard it about 18 months ago. It's gotten bigger and better. We've now got HD Supply, which is obviously a national company, Fortune 500 company that y'all are very familiar with. They already have a headquarters building here. This is their new headquarters building right down the street on Cumberland Boulevard. It will be known as Encore Center. There's $100 million in private investment that's going into this. There's $85 million into the building, and then $15 million is being invested with equipment by HD Supply. 500 net new full-time jobs, and here's I think the real kicker in this, the average wage is $91,157. So these are really high-quality jobs. I think that we're all proud to be able to deliver this in Cobb County. The building delivery date is scheduled for December 27, move in the 1st of 2018, build it out and move in 2018. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd also like to introduce Tripper Briggs from HD Supply and Chris Scott from Greenstone, which is the building developer. So you probably don't want to hear any more from the lawyer. You'd probably rather hear from the people who are actually building the building and moving into the building. So I'll ask Chris to come up first for Greenstone.
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris Scott with Greenstone Properties. We are the developer for the project. We do office in Cobb County. We're super excited about this project and the jobs and really the investment we're getting to make in Cobb County. So thank you all. We appreciate it.
Good morning. I'll echo his comments. My mom was a teacher too, and I hope to someday be able to retire to be a teacher. It means a lot to me as well. So I just want to say I'm from HD Supply. I run the strategy, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the company. And, we started this journey, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we started thinking about where to call home for us. And it really wasn't that tough of a decision when it came down to it. And we're proud to say and proud to be calling Cobb County in the Cumberland area our home the next however many years probably that I am with the company. And I will say that we're overly excited about that prospect. And now as we start to bring new people on, and I'm a big part of that, it's really nice to see us beginning to form our new company as we bring people and jobs from San Diego and from Florida to the Atlanta area and to the Cobb County area. So I just want to say thank you very much for your support. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, anything further from us? Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Today, can you just give us an idea of how much property tax it's generating for the school district today?
Wow. I know your CFO has got a chart. Do you have a chart that shows? I'm going to have to get that specific details on that. $17,000 is what is currently being paid, and that's going to be maintained And so what this will be is this will kick in with the full, there'll be tax abatements that will be involved with it.
It's 10 years and ratcheted down 10%
That's
per year.
correct.
Okay, and
That's
then,
correct.
so we have a make-whole provision, and so it'll be $17,000 regardless if the project goes forward or not.
That's correct.
And at the end of the day, when this project is developed, over time, the full value of the tax will be realized by the district.
That's correct, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Jeter and Mr. Hungerford. Over the last 4 years, we've been able to develop a relationship and working together, and the lines of communications are open. Saying this not so much for them because they know it, but for the public, and that the conversation continues, and look forward to future cooperation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to congratulate HD Supply for staying in Cobb County, and look forward to the 2017 opening date. I kind of, when you mentioned the $91,000 start average salary, I kind of want to say, where do I submit my application? But it probably won't happen. But anyway, it does sound good for the community. Sounds potential and future job seekers. So I congratulate you for looking, for staying in Cobb County and for taking care of our community. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, I failed to congratulate Mr. Jeter on his recent promotion, so congratulations.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Again, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
We appreciate
Thank
it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is the approval of 4 sets of minutes. We had 3 tax abatements meetings, and then our last meeting minutes. So if there's no objection, can we make those approved? Mr. Sweeney? Objection. Okay. All right. Okay, we'll have those as approved then. Then our superintendent has requested that we move an item up before Board of Business, if that's okay, our SPLOST report. We'll move that up now. Mr. Wilson is here, so we'll move that one up next.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Mr. John Adams to come and introduce the item. Obviously, we're getting closer to the time to vote on the resolution. So this is going to be a discussion today about some of the major construction projects. So we obviously invite a lot of discussion, a lot of questions on the behalf of the board so that we can move forward in our process for getting ready for SPLOST 5. John.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Superintendent, Madam Chair, members of the board. As Mr. Ragsdale said, our purpose in this item today is to update our ongoing discussion regarding the planning of SPLOST 5, which is the continuation of our SPLOST program. Today is intended to be the latest in a series of conversations with the board, today focusing on the major construction projects anticipated in SPLOST 5. And our ultimate goal in this entire process is to provide a final draft copy of the SPLOST 5 notebook to the board by the September work session. So this is a latest in a series, hopefully getting more detailed and providing more information to the board as we go, and culminating with that notebook at the September work session. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Parker, Mr. Ragsdale and I have been meeting very regularly on these items, so we're very happy with the product so far, so we're excited to bring you some news today. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, fellow board members, Superintendent Ragsdale, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you, and especially talking about something that is very important to the school district. Approximately a year ago, in August of 2015, you were at a board retreat where we shared with you the major topics were classroom utilization and forecasting for future enrollments. Board meeting or two later, you gave the administration approval to officially begin planning for SPLOST 5. We have been doing that We have been communicating with your stakeholders. We have been planning, we've been listening, we've been studying, and we have been preparing the SPLOST 5 document. It is nice to have a full year of planning as we bring forward to you every other month our updates. The education SPLOST programs allow schools to be supported. That's very important. The staff members to my left, the department heads, have worked very closely with Mr. Parker's department in order to assure us that those needs are there. They've done an outstanding job as we have looked at infrastructure, local school requests, technology, instruction, and all the type of things that keep this district supported. They've done a great job, and obviously this penny is always very tight. We work very hard to provide you a list of needs and not wants. As well as those areas, the areas that I'm going to spend more time on today are new schools, renovations, additions, modifications, replacements, and modernization. I use the word modernization for the first time today because as school buildings age, you have to make sure they're very capable of being able to provide the type of instruction to young people that you want. So we look at that as well. Thanks to the successes of the past SPLOST, you've allowed this district, through your direction, to be debt-free. Most districts in this state, even with the addition of SPLOST, cannot make that claim. Recently, your CFO shared with you, with your leadership and the superintendent's leadership, that you have a AAA credit rating, which is almost unheard of in school district business these days. So I share that with you because as we plan this SPLOST, you and we and everyone working toward this SPLOST program certainly believes in financial accountability, and the district has a tremendous history of that. One thing that I would like to share before I give you the list of major projects is the fact that this penny begins to be stretched more and more and more each year. In 2013, Mr. Banks, as you have shared on occasions, we lost the car sales tax revenue. That hurt the SPLOST programs as far as its collections are concerned. We all know that we lived for 5 years through an economic recession where the collections were less than we had projected. So now as we're recovering, which is all good news, we now are in a position that construction costs are increasing. So as we were hurt on one end, as we recover and get to the other side, we now are experiencing construction costs that are experiencing inflation, as we all know about that. So it's a wonderful penny, and it's being stretched to its fullest. And I shouldn't have brought notes. In following of this timeline, as I said, we've been doing this for a year now. And in March, we came to you and shared that we were working on this and that we were communicating with the community and doing those kind of things. Then in May, we come to you again. In April, we come to you again and begin to share the projects. In June, we come to you again. So we've been doing this process every other month, trying to give you an update and letting you know all of the work that's going on to try to make sure that we're doing the right things. So we bring to you in August today a needs not wants list. And I emphasize that because as much as this is a needs not want list, it does not meet all the needs of the district. It's a great program. There's great news here, but we can't cover all of the needs. And that's why you have and need to have and be in a position to have the continuation of SPLOST programs. So major projects that we are ready to share with you today, is, even though we're still planning and adjusting those budgets and making sure we're accurate, Harmony Leland Replacement School. It's going to be built on Factory Shoals Road, that site. East Valley Replacement School on the East Cobb Middle School site. King Springs Replacement School on the King Springs site, Smyrna Middle School, or the Smyrna Area Middle School, where the site is yet to be determined, and additional classrooms where the sites are yet to be determined. And if you see or notice the pattern there, you will see that it is becoming more and more difficult for us to find the property that we need to build schools. And one thing that we've all talked about and you've been focused on is if there is available property close or adjacent to existing properties, it's a good thought process to consider that. Additions and modifications: Dodgen Middle School Classroom Addition, Loving Good Middle School Classroom Addition, Dickerson Middle School Classroom Addition, Pebblebrook High School Classroom Addition, Campbell High School Classroom Addition, Wheeler upgrade and renovation of an existing building that's attached to their STEM program, Central Office Support Center modifications and consolidation. What I mean very quickly by that is bringing the HR department back on campus, taking the 440 building and bringing them on campus. And it's offset by reduced cost of those existing facilities. Walton High School returning, as we built or in the process of building Walton High School, we had to remove the tennis courts and the softball field, so both of those sports have been playing off campus, so we would be wanting to return the tennis courts and the softball field back to campus. Sprayberry High School CTAE renovation and modifications, North Cobb High School CTAE renovation and modifications, Pebblebrook High School gymnasium replacement, South Cobb High School gymnasium replacement. The list goes pretty extensively. Sprayberry High School gymnasium replacement, Campbell High School theater replacement, Lassiter High School theater renovation, Osborne High School theater replacement, Pebblebrook High School theater replacement. So you can see the list is very extensive. And that is a needs list. All of those projects fit the category of modification, addition, classroom needs, or modernization. So as you notice me going down that list, a lot of that had to do with the classroom utilization study, where we show the need for additional seats in a lot of areas. And you can see it's all over the county. Not only are we trying to add on to Loving Good, but we need to add on to Dodgen and Dickerson to maintain those seats. We need a new school in the Smyrna area for middle school students and elementary school students. So it's a very extensive list. It's a complicated list because, quite honestly, what we've been working toward is trying to get within our budgets and our anticipated budgets. The $750 million seems like a ton of money, and it is. But when you have 112 facilities and all of them need your attention, and you're a growing school district because people want to move here, you have to plan to make sure that the education is provided for young people, and this is certainly a way to do it from a facility standpoint. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, that was quick.
I was trying to be quick and to the point.
Okay. Original, if I can think about all the numbers and all I think we were talking about needing possibly 2 elementary schools in Smyrna. If we enlarge King Springs, that takes care of part of it, but there's still a need for some additional seats in that won't take care of all the elementary needs in Smyrna. And I didn't hear anything else on elementary. And I didn't have time to look at everything you said, but trying to.
I was going kind of.
I know you were going kind of fast there, but I didn't hear that hit on.
And I went around it just a little bit, but what I was trying to be was very direct in the fact that with the Harmony Leland new replacement school, there are seats there. There are seats, obviously, with a larger footprint at King Springs, and then there's a need for a middle school, the site yet to be determined, and undesignated classrooms, the site to be determined, because the most difficult part of all of this is finding a site to build on. So as we add seats in Smyrna, in addition to what I just shared, it would most likely have to be on an existing site. So the ability to go build 2 brand new schools on 2 different sites, there's not property there that we've been able to find to do that. So that's why we went to King Springs. And I have shared that with you, like you said, in an earlier meeting, where we just simply walked the campus to determine whether we could do something on the existing
Right.
campus. Because which is a great plan and complimentary, by the way, that you reopen Brown to accommodate King Springs.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that you close any school, because you need them for the future if the growth projections continue. And so as you rebuild King Springs, you may actually need to keep open Brown. I don't know the answer to that, and I wouldn't recommend that at this point, but with more seats in Smyrna, they're needed, and we have to find locations to build them. So we've got some areas in here where it's undesignated at this point, because I couldn't recommend to you where we'd put it right now.
Okay. We'll talk. Okay. Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I didn't miss here, you mentioned something about East Valley Elementary,
I did,
a replacement.
a replacement.
And did you recommend a location for that?
I did. East Cobb Middle School. The location of the current East Cobb Middle, since you're building a new school, to move that property would become available.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson, I know you concentrated on the facilities. Have y'all any analysis on the computer needs, technology needs, and the textbook needs in this place?
Mr. Parker's department has worked very closely with the department heads to my left in doing all of that, and they've done an excellent job. I don't have that in my report today.
Okay.
Obviously, we have shared with you by PowerPoint monies dedicated in all those categories of local school needs, technology, instruction, in all of those areas. And those are very important areas. And Mr. Banks, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up, because those are vital areas to support schools. And they do an outstanding job with this. That dollar, or that penny as I've begun to call it, is getting tighter and tighter because of the increased cost of building construction. These projects that I went over with you this morning are costing more. And as we forecast out, they're going to continue, we believe, that will show some increase in building construction cost over the life of any SPLOST for that matter. So that dollar is scrutinized very closely, because it winds up being in competition with new school construction, modifications, modernization, et cetera. But yes, they've done an outstanding job of sharing with Mr. Parker and his staff and myself the needs for those areas.
Mr. Banks, if I can, let me jump in here. All of the normal topics and categories that you're used to seeing in SPLOST will be there in the notebook. As we get to because, like, for example, we've got safety and security. That will be a category in there. So you will see those in the notebook, the final draft notebook that we bring you by September work session. As we get, though, like, for example, in technology, I got a little, but for the most part, what you're going to see in technology is maintaining. It's refresh and replacement and those kind of things. You're not going to see a lot of new. What we wanted to do today is talk about the new construction, major construction projects, because a lot of the projects that we're talking about today need board input and discussion, so that we can make sure that we get as close to the final version of what the notebook needs to be by September. So there is very minimal tweaking, if any at all, when we get that final version of the notebook to you.
Right.
I hope that helps.
And the one reason I bring up textbooks, in my opinion, we should migrate from hard textbooks to more digital. And in 2019 and on out, we will hit the 7-year cycle on textbooks again. In fact, we'll probably be past it. So I hope the administration is looking at migrating from the hard book to a more digital where it's feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, the latest because we don't call them textbook adoptions any longer. We're calling them learning resources. And as you recall, and I know we've got Jennifer Lawson here, and please jump in if I mess anything up. But the last adoption of learning resources to the board was really a wide array of mixture of resources. And we're getting to the point where we're actually, when we look at a textbook, for example, and we're looking to digital resources, we're going as far as we're going to say, in physical science book, and I'm just for an example, we want to purchase from you chapters 2 through 10 and chapters 24 through 28. We're going that deep into individualizing the purchases that we make for our learning resources, because as we know, a teacher is no longer going into a classroom and opening a book and saying to all the students, go to page 23 and let's talk about how for the next 180 days we're going to go from page 1 to page 280. We don't have teachers that teach like that anymore, nor do we want teachers that teach like that, because there's such a wide array of options and flexibility that's out there and availability of resources. We want to make sure that we prepare our students by providing our teachers with the best selection of tools that we can, and that goes to technology as well. The purpose of the technology teacher with the best environment that we can to teach. So to your point, yes, are we saying that we're going to be totally digital resources? Probably not, because there'll always be something to have said to add value to the classroom from a text, perhaps, but also I'll take it a step further. And we're in the process now of digitizing a lot of our legacy content so that we can be able to still utilize content that we've purchased in the past, but have it in a digital format such that teachers can have access to it and provide it through screens and projectors to students in the classroom. So we're absolutely moving to the digital format. I would probably say we're already there. To a certain degree, but do we still have textbooks? Absolutely. Will we have textbooks for the next 10 years? In some form, perhaps, but the relying on the textbook of a teacher is greatly diminished every year that we proceed toward digital resources.
Earlier this year, I believe, Mary Elizabeth did a presentation on CTLS. And part of that, if I remember correctly, was we were in the process of developing some of our own teaching material in our schools. Is that process still in effect?
That's what I was alluding to. We're not as much creating our own. I mean, we are doing some of that, but what we're trying to do is really piece together in a quilt-like fashion the best resources from all of the providers that we can find. Because, for example, in the past, when we would say, like you alluded to, the textbook adoption. Well, we're up for adoption for, and put a set of books in the back, and the public comes in, the teachers come in, and we say, okay, this is the best set. Well, a lot of times, textbook manufacturers will, or publishers rather, will bundle up a lot of things with that textbook. Some software, some consumables, and these kind of things. And I would go ahead and hazard to say 100% of all of the stuff that comes is never used, ever. Because there's some that is legitimate, legitimately needed in the classroom and provides value, and there's some that's just not. So what we're trying to do is get to a position where we filter all of the not out so that we can go and we can say, okay, like I said, we want these chapters because your textbook really has it going on with this, but then put it all together in CTLS. So in SPLOST, I know we just took a diversion here, but in SPLOST you will see learning resources as a line item under curriculum instruction and technology section in the notebook once we get there.
One other point, when we readopted the textbooks, math and language and so forth, several years ago, I was under the impression that part of that bundle was a digital or CD or DVD at that time with each textbook. Do I have that wrong, or did we just get a version for each class or each teacher?
Yeah, that was that was kind of a piecemeal approach. That was the first approach that we had that included any kind of digital resource.
Right.
So I would say that was our rookie year. That hopefully we got better after that first rookie year. But yes, to answer your question, there was some, but it was also some subscription web type resources that we utilized, as well as the hard copy of math resources, as well as consumables as well. So fast forwarding to the last digital resources acquisition that we did was much more complex in that it had a combination of resources. So we definitely progressed from that first rookie year to the next acquisition.
Okay. At the time we did the readoption, there were a lot of teachers buying their own textbooks because we did not have the latest versions. Are we past that now?
I'm going to say absolutely yes, we're past that, because that was the gap that we're talking about, is when, the textbooks were out of date and time to be adopted, and then there was a gap between the adoption of approximately a year to year and a half, I think it was. So yes, we're past that. But I will say what we're not past is teachers will always be purchasing additional resources for the classroom, just like, and we don't want that situation to exist, because we want to provide everything that the teacher would need. But teachers do what they do, and that's teach. And so different teachers have different methodologies and like to use different resources. And so we will never be out of the environment of a teacher purchasing some of their own stuff, because they just like to individualize their teaching and learning.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I just wanted to emphasize to our audience that we started converting from, as Mr. Ragsdale indicated in several of his comments, converting to digital from hard copy about 3 years ago. I think Mr. Ragsdale indicated that too. And I just want to compliment the staff that they, in the last 2 years, have accelerated that. And also, just like other things, and to the staff's credit, they're trying to, or not trying, but they're customizing depending on the school's needs as to how, what materials are needed. So it's not yes, there's maybe some bulk purchases of resources, but there's also customization. So, and then also finally, as again, Mr. Ragsdale, and I'm just really trying to drive home the nail for us, is all students don't learn as equally on the same medium. Some of them, a few, will always need a textbook for one reason or the other. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamhorn. And I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, but I do need help in understanding. If when I think back to the numbers that you presented with the growth numbers, the addition at King Springs will take care of King Springs. But if I'm remembering correctly, and I don't have my numbers in front of me, I didn't bring those today, but the addition at Harmony Leland will help Harmony Leland and Clay in that area. But there was still growth in many of the Smyrna elementary schools. There was a little bit of room in one or two that where they might, we can do some redistricting and take care of a little bit of it. But I thought there was still a need for another elementary school in Smyrna. Can you?
There is a need for additional classrooms in Smyrna.
So will we be adding those? Because I didn't hear that on the list.
I had in there additional classrooms to be determined, the site to be determined, because right now we don't have a site.
But that would be, so that would address that growth.
It would address that growth and any other growth that was identified during the course of the SPLOST that we didn't catch on to. And yes, you need more seats in Smyrna, but as you recall with the 10-year demographic study, after that bubble comes through, you'll see elementary school sites that have some room in them, some significant room in them. So the 10-year projection for seats in the elementary school range doesn't exceed capacities.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The 10-year demographic study shows that you certainly exceed the capacities without doing something and building and adding on and doing those kind of things in middle school and high school, but it does not in elementary. You have some declines in parts of the county in elementary. In the Smyrna, Mableton area, you have growth for there. And that's why you're building on, you're adding a new building for Harmony Leland. And if SPLOST 4 allows, you're going to add some classrooms at Riverside. And if it doesn't, it rolls over. And then you need a new elementary school in Smyrna for sure. And we look for property and it's not there. So we got more work to do there. And that's why this report is not finished. So the good thing that we came up with when we walked the King Springs site, at first glance, it looks like just a depression in the property. Right. But if you look at it a little further from an architect's viewpoint that we brought in, then obviously that is a rebuildable site. Several of the sites in Smyrna, because of some of the age of those buildings, the sites are small. So when you're trying to add on to an adjacent property that has a small footprint to begin with, it becomes very difficult. So, and that's the reason I made just kind of the side comment that, and you're already doing this, but as you look at your existing sites, and if property were to become available adjacent to it, you ought to consider it because you need that. You need that all over the county, and especially as programs have improved and increased. Like you're playing lacrosse today, where 10 years ago maybe you didn't. So you need more space in all of your sites, and as you add on to these schools, like Wheeler and Lassiter and Pebblebrook and others, we're finding it very difficult to find a building site on existing properties to add on to these type of things that we've mentioned today. So yes, there is still a need for Smyrna Elementary School seats. And yes, what I have in here now is undesignated classrooms because I wouldn't know how to tell you where it's going to be. And it would be very difficult to try to put 4 classrooms here and 4 classrooms here and 4 classrooms there. So the ideal thing would be to build one existing site.
But we're going to need to be making plans for that sometime soon.
Well, from my standpoint, the more flexibility that you have in your SPLOST program, like undesignated classrooms, it helps us plan to make sure we put it in the right spot. Because you're right, LaBelle is a little bit overcrowded, Norton Park's a little bit overcrowded, Argyle's a little overcrowded, but they're a little overcrowded.
Right.
And you go out in those 10-year projections and they stay a little bit overcrowded. Where King Springs, and you're very familiar, of course, with this being your post, King Springs is significantly overcrowded. Right. So we paid attention to that first. So from a true facility standpoint, anytime that we're allowed to do undesignated, and you know, I'll just throw this in as my last statement because I know Mr. Scammon has a question related to this or something that's important, I'm sure. And that is that as you plan for this SPLOST program, you're planning all the way out through 2023. And that's why the superintendent has asked us to give you a yearly update on the 10-year demographics, because even though we think we did you a very good job, it changes.
All right. Who was next? Mr. Wheeler? Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson, what you're proposing with the growth in the South Cobb area and the Pebblebrook, Campbell High School zones, what you're saying is we're looking at doing additions rather than placing a new high school somewhere in that area?
Our first option that we first presented to you was to put a new high school in that area. And again, as the real estate folks that support this school district went out with the task of finding that property, they came back without a site. And I don't mean that as a contradiction. It's just, it is a real thing in this school district today. And it's a compliment, too, of you and all of us who have dedicated our careers and lives here. People like to move here. And they're going to continue to move here and develop here, just as the persons before me were talking about their development. And finding available building sites are really difficult. And so that was our first choice, was to build a new school between Campbell and Pebblebrook. And if that choice is not available, then we go to Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C and look at other opportunities.
I'm just curious, do we have land on those two sites to build additions with the amount of growth that we're looking at?
That's a great question and a difficult answer, and that is the reason why that back the previous meeting we shared with you that we may be looking at the Clay site to use potentially for the addition at Pebblebrook if we were to go that route. And that's why we're still in the planning stages and we don't have this book necessarily ready for you today, even though the planning timeline was always to have it ready for you by September. We were trying to have it ready for you today, and we're still planning on that because even though the Clay site is very close, it is not adjacent. And looking at building the larger elementary school at Harmony Leland, the 10-year projection shows that by building the larger footprint at Harmony Leland Factory Shoals, it can house the anticipated growth for Harmony Leland and Clay. So you could take those two sites, put them in the new Harmony Leland site, and accommodate all the students that are expected to be there. So the thought process is when you vacate a school like the existing Harmony Leland or the existing Clay, you don't give it up. You maintain it for another purpose. Harmony Leland has some fairly good facilities in that older school. Some of those classrooms are not all that old, even though the majority of them are and were built in the 50s. But the Clay site will be needed for either elementary classrooms or the Pebblebrook addition.
Well, I'll throw it out there. One of these meetings that we had for SPLOS, one of the parents from that area was saying that their child may have 6 transitions, 6 different schools that they go to. That's kind of different than any other place in the county. I don't know, we have problems with land, but just curious.
We're actually looking at that, Mr. Wheeler, because you're right. In that area, there are many more transitions that students go through than any other area, and we're looking at that. Some of the solution to that is part of SPLOS. Some of it is not part of SPLOS because it just, it depends on programs, for example. But kind of to go in just a little bit more detail of the Campbell and Pebblebrook situation is when we say classroom addition, what we're really talking about is very similar to what we're doing at Osborne currently, where it's not a total rebuild like you go in and demolish the entire school and then rebuild the entire school. You keep newer buildings that are in good shape on the campus. You demo older buildings and then you replace them with newer, bigger buildings. So it's not just going in at Pebblebrook and Campbell and tacking on some classrooms to a wing. It's actually demo old buildings, just like we're doing at Osborne. Same exact thing that we're doing at Osborne. So, and we're struggling with language because while, we would, when you use the term rebuild, it's kind of, the perception is, well, you're going to demo the entire school and replace the school, and that's simply not what we're trying to do at Pebblebrook nor Campbell. But it's, I guess you could say, a partial rebuild, maybe, of the campus. So it's very similar to what we're doing at Osborne again, and it will be similarly constructed in that manner. So I hope that helps.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. I want to take this time to focus a little on process. Having the good fortune of having seen SPLOS 3 and now this SPLOS, and similar to the comments our superintendent was making about the elevation of what we do in terms of the acquisition of not called books anymore. They call what? Yeah, learning resources. I can't stress enough how much our processes have improved. I remember how insulated the SPLOST deal was. There were no community meetings. And even in listening to these conversations, I think a person, unless they were just completely committed to disenchantment, cannot say that we have not been listening in terms of what the needs are in given communities. Whether we came out and said, hey, this is something we are considering, the community has been given the opportunity to give input, and in instances where it makes sense, I've seen transition in terms of we might have started out with this plan and then we transitioned to that plan. So I think it's really important. I actually look in the audience and I see a parent who came to us some time ago about the theater at Pebblebrook. And I hope that it gives, those type of people momentum or optimism that, as Mr. Wilson speaks this morning and we talk about if the notebook passes when it's voted on, that people see a means to an end. And it's not just rhetoric. It's just not people sitting up here that's desensitized with a one-track mind. So kudos to Chris, James, the entire staff. It's on process and it being transparent and it being honestly receptive to the needs of our district. And I just have to say that because if I didn't, I would not be, that would be less than honest. So I really appreciate that and what you guys are doing. I know we still haven't officially passed the notebook, but I think there's a lot to be said in terms of how robust the process is when it comes to SPLOST. Thank you.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll second what Mr. Morgan said also. We've just, the staff, and not only in academic areas, but maintenance and resources and everything, just been proactive and transparent and very communicative. But let me touch what might be third rail, if I can use that analogy. Do you anticipate any tweaking of our school districts, the lines? And then I have a follow-up.
I'm not even going to say that's a great question.
Let me go ahead and do the follow-up for you.
I can do it, but go ahead. I will appreciate the help.
The intent of my question, besides waking everybody up, is if we want to tweak, and with our, as the previous presenter did and as you did, people are moving in here. I could see where we need to tweak and lack of property. My only point, again, what Mr. Morgan has just said too, is let's start early. Let's involve our communities. And I think they will be, unless they just want to create mayhem, they'll be extremely supportive.
Always the potential of redistricting. You can't go build a new school unless you're going to redistrict those lines. You always look at that. In most cases, especially in middle schools and high schools, you're at capacities everywhere. So you're trying to add on to schools to compete with the growth of the school. And so there really isn't going to be a lot of redistricting needs. But anytime you build, there is the potential to redistrict. We're a fairly stable community, believe it or not. We talk about mobility and movability and walkability and all of those kind of things. So a school that could be full today, 10 years from now, could be at 80% or 60% capacity where you would need to redistrict. But they look at that. You saw how I said they look at that every day, because it's really important, and it is an important question. And I would be remiss by not simply saying that when you add on to schools, you obviously have to look at that too.
And kind of tagging on to that, that's the benefit. And in SPLOST 4, we didn't have an undesignated classroom category. In SPLOST 3, I think we did, and I know we did in 2. But the reason for that is exactly what you said. We don't necessarily just want to knee-jerk and say, oh, we need a school here, we need a school there. By having the flexibility that's afforded to us by updating our demographics study annually, now we're able to really have real and meaningful data. So it's not like we do a demographic study and 4 years after we've had it done, we're still using that 4-year-old data. That's just not smart. So updating the demographic study annually allows us to be much more nimble in where we need to plan for. Now, not nimble as in, well, we can just move kids around, but with undesignated classrooms coupled with the updated data, we're more readily planning for a lot of new schools, and they're empty before they even open. So we're definitely not going to go down that path. So we definitely, I appreciate the question, because redistricting, especially at the high school level, we treat it like the plague. You never want it. Sometimes it perhaps is necessary, but I don't think, we don't have any major redistricting plans as part of this SPLOST. What we've designed this SPLOST and what we are designing this SPLOST to do is accommodate growth with minimal disruption. Such that, Brad brought up about in South Cobb, the transition of students. We're looking to address that with minimal disruption. So it's not going to be like, okay, we juggle everybody around, but just like, the Harmony Leland School replacement, we're going to build that to accommodate what we need it to in that area with King Springs. We're not going to be rebuilding King Springs with the same number of IUs that they currently have. We're rebuilding King Springs to accommodate growth. So doing coupled with undesignated classrooms allows us to be a lot more fluid with our planning.
Of course, the new middle school in Smyrna will require redistricting of all the middle schools there.
Oh, yeah. Anytime we build a new school, there's obviously redistricting required.
Yeah.
Which is, maybe it's a two-edged sword, that we weren't able to find land in the Smyrna, South Cobb area for Pebblebrook and Campbell, because that would be 2 high schools that we have to be redistricted for the new high school. So now that we're on to Plan B for those 2 schools, certainly redistricting is really not part of that equation. So both communities should, breathe a lot easier, even though you want a new high school. But it's also that you don't have to go through the redistricting situation.
Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the public's consumption, this is not something that's going to happen in the next year, maybe even the next 2 years, but it is going to happen in 5 to 6, 7 years from bring some of these new facilities online. So we've got plenty of time to plan, let the public and the future students that are coming into our school system to plan on where their child will be, which school they'll be attending, and the demographic studies does show some major shifts in population and needs. We've got some time, so I hope the public doesn't get too anxious about redistricting because we've got plenty of time to plan for it. And the future, the parents out there are not, the parents that have the 2 and 3, 4-year-old children that will be going to elementary schools, we can pretty much tell them which school they'll be going to in 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, so they can make their plans accordingly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson, when you are recommending redistricting in areas where you have this growth, are you recommending that based on when the numbers actually are there or based on a projection? For instance, if you had a high school and you say that in 3 years we're going to have 800 over capacity, we need to redistrict this area, that may not materialize, but then again, it may. When are you proposing redistricting some of these?
Let me jump in here, Mr. Wheeler. redistricting is not being proposed at all. We do the demographic study so that we know where the growth is going to occur. The challenge we have right now, and not really a challenge, but the environment that we have is simply have capacity in schools. And what we're wanting to do is make sure that through undesignated classrooms and through the new schools that we have slated and the replacement schools, is that we're accommodating the growth in the areas in which it's going to occur. So again, over the next 5 years, we can pretty much scientifically determine, and we're updating the data annually. Past 5 years, that's where it becomes more important to update the demographics data annually, because then what you're doing is you're just keeping a 5-year window. You're just moving it a year at a time. So you can maintain that scientific approach, and you're not really into guesstimates. So let's be real clear. We can blame Mr. Scammahorn for bringing this up. We're not recommending any redistricting. We're recommending construction projects to accommodate growth in areas that have been identified that are going to have growth occurring in them over the next 3 to 5 years. And again, I want to reiterate, going back a little bit. You know, there's always been a lot of discussion about, you know, well, SPLOST, you know, it's special purpose. What's so special about it? Because you keep asking for it every 5 years. Well, what's special about it is education. That's what's special about SPLOST, is it helps Cobb County to fund facilities and equipment for education that we have been very well known for. That's why we have people coming to move into Cobb County, is for a large part due to the schools. So that being said, it's very easy to say, if you're in one area, well, this other area over here is getting a project. We need this more than they need that. So it's very difficult for us to balance, but that is our attempt, is to balance, to make sure that we're covering the entire district of Cobb County with a SPLOST. And as Mr. Wilson said, the one penny, even though it brings in $750 million for SPLOST 5, is simply not enough to accommodate all of our needs in a district as large as we are. And I guess the silver lining to that, flip side of the coin, is we are very, very fortunate to have SPLOST as a funding mechanism in our county, because without it, you can see $750 million added onto the general fund budget would not go very far. And we would not have the facilities, we would not have the equipment, we would not have the school district and the educational system in Cobb that we've grown accustomed to. So, rewinding, let me reiterate again, because I know it's on tape. I know there's emails flying all over the place now.
Did you hear it?
We are not, James is not recommending redistricting. I'm not recommending redistricting. We're recommending construction projects to accommodate growth. That's how we want to accommodate growth. Now, is redistricting just, you know, totally off the table? There's always going to be tweaks. When, like Susan said, when we build a new school, you got to tweak the lines and these kind of things. But undesignated classrooms is there such that we don't have to tweak lines to a great extent. We can add space where we need it as it occurs.
Mr. Scammahorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just finish up. My intention is not to suggest we were redistricting, but we need to start the communications and have open communication. Let me cite 2 examples real quick. I was a teacher at Sprayberry. I think it was turn of the century, around 2000, when we opened Kell. We learned from a real bad experience. I think it was Harrison, but I'm not sure. I've slept a couple of times since then. But after the bad experience, when we opened Kell, we appointed a community leader, Mr. Bill Fletcher, okay, to steer the committee. We had community meetings, town hall meetings. I think there was a total of 5, okay. And there was a few problems, but other than that, it went very smoothly because of the public input and the cooperation, okay? So we look at redistricting, I think, too strongly as a negative. I look at it as a quality of education for our children. Second example, in Churchill Manor in West Cobb County, I owned a home until about 10 years ago there. And in that about 16, 17 years I lived in that home, I was redistricted to 4 high schools. And I was happy on every one of them because it meant lowering the population of the existing schools, and quality of education was improving because of the new school opening up. And just let you know, when I moved there, it was McEachern, then Harrison opened, then Kennesaw Mountain, then Allatoona. By the way, my daughter still lives in the house, and it's been redistricted again to Hillgrove, okay, in about a 20-year or less period. So that's my point is redistricting is a positive and can be a positive if it's approached correctly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just for the record, all prior to me. Just saying.
So let's go, Mr. Scammahorn said redistricting is your friend, okay?
It can be if done right.
Okay.
You know, if you have appendicitis and you get the right doctor, it's not bad.
Not bad, right.
But if you get somebody that's an auto mechanic and you want to, no, never mind.
Okay. Okay. Let's wind up with our next steps. Can you walk us through, Mr. Ragsdale? We've had this overview. What happens next, leading up to the final vote?
Sure. So, as we've presented from the start, and I think to Mr. Scammahorn's point, communication often and upfront is the key to success. Not for redistricting, but for the SPLOST program. So, as we've said from the start, we would ask the board to vote on the resolution in October. And that's still the plan. And what we did was we worked backwards from that goal, because that allows us to have the public vote in March of 2017. So that being said, today's discussion was to get out, like I said, the major construction projects, such that each board member knows kind of the major projects going on with construction, new schools, modifications, renovations, et cetera. And then we are in the process, as we speak, of finalizing the draft copy of the notebook. That will be presented to the board by the September work session. If we can get it finished before the work session, we will present it to the board. We'll get it to you. Just know that in September, the work session, be prepared that we will have the hard copy of the notebook. And when it's presented to the board in public in September, then we'll make it available on the web as we've always done. That being said, then the public will have the opportunity to peruse the entire project list, which, again, I want to reiterate that no other district in the state does what Cobb County School District does as far as the level of detail that we make available to the public, to the board, in written form in the notebook. No other district does that. So the public knows exactly what they're voting on, and the schools know exactly what they're going to get should the referendum pass. So that being said, the notebook will be made public, and then in the October board cycle, we will ask the board to approve the resolution, and then it will go to the Board of Elections, and then we'll have everything in place to get on the ballot in March of 2017.
Okay, so the board will be presented your final draft of the notebook at the September work session, by the September work session, and we will vote on it at the voting meeting, the night meeting, the September night meeting.
No, you do not vote on the notebook. You
Okay.
vote on the resolution.
On the resolution.
The resolution
Okay.
will be voted on in October.
Okay, okay.
Thursday night, October meeting, or the work session?
I'll get
The Thursday voting meeting
The
will be
voting
the
meeting.
night meeting. That way it'll, yeah. Yeah,
So the October.
It also gives the public enough time, and also gives the F&T committee each in September and October the opportunity to review both the notebook and the resolution as well.
So, all right, so just so that I'm sorry, don't mean to be belaboring a point, but so then the notebook actually becomes final then at the October with the voting, so at the October meeting.
The project list, which is contained in the notebook, becomes, if you will, sealed, finalized, what have you, when the board votes on the resolution in October.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. We appreciate you very, very much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. Great. And thanks to everyone for their patience in moving that item forward. We appreciate it. And that brings us to item number 5, board business. First item is quick. We can do that one and then take a break. It looks like everyone would like a break, so we'll do this. This one's going to be fairly quick. We'll do that one and then take our break. The board has completed their training, the 9 hours required for training for this year. It's time to think about training for next year. Some of us have mentioned, generally what we do is we receive 6 hours of training for attending the GSBA conference at the Waverly in December each year. Some of us have talked about, well, let me back up. We usually receive 6 hours of training for that and then 3 hours of in-house training. Some of us have talked about the fact that we might benefit more from doing all 9 hours in-house. So not having to think about what those might be comprised of, just wanted to get your thoughts. Would you like for us to think about what that might look like and come up with a plan to present and think about and then toss around, or do you just want to absolutely just say, let's continue with the conference? First thoughts. Mr. Scamhorn.
I like the idea. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I like the idea of variety and getting some different kind of information that would be as useful by doing it the other way. But I'm open either way, but I like your idea.
You like all of it in-house?
In-house.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we do it in-house, how will it be broken down as far? Is it?
We can do it however we want to. We can design it.
So we can spread it out over a period of time?
Absolutely.
Rather than just 6 hours all at one time.
Yes.
We do 3 hours or 2 hours.
We can select our topics and bring in speakers as we need and so forth. We can design it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm certainly in favor of in-house.
Okay. Okay. Is it then consensus that you would like for, I will send you an email and ask for input on topics and then get with Mr. Dole and come up with a draft proposal for us. Okay? Mr. Banks.
That does not preclude our GSBA training that we'll still get credit for that. Is that correct?
Well, that was not my intention because that would be an additional cost. That's fairly expensive. I was thinking we would use the cost.
You say we would not go to GSBA?
Right.
In December?
Right. This would be either or.
No, GSBA gives you a lot of benefits, so I would go to GSBA.
Okay, so you're opposed to it. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'm all for it decides, and in case anybody's watching doesn't understand, this may have been pointed out earlier, but your school board elected representatives are the only elected officials in Georgia that are required for continuing education. And Ms. Thayer and I started together, and I think that there are certain topics that are covered if we go to the state meeting that there are other districts throughout Georgia that really benefit because they don't have the resources that we have. And because we're the 24th largest school system in the country, there are some issues and things that we deal with here in Cobb that may not ever be covered in the training that's planned. So I would be for the in-house, and I think it'd be beneficial to us.
That's a good point, Mr. Chastain, for the public. Most of the school systems in Georgia are quite small, and when Georgia School Board Association does a conference. Many of their discussions are for school systems who don't have don't have legal departments and things of that nature, and they address smaller concerns. So many of the topics that are covered are not as relevant as they are for a large school system. So that's what our discussion is based on. So do you want to take a quick vote then? How many of you would prefer in-house training? Raise your hand. Okay, we'll have in-house training then. I will ask you for input on that and then on topics, and then we'll come back together. We have to submit our plan in October to GSBA, so I will get something out to you soon. Okay, and with that, let's take is 10 minutes sufficient? Or would you like more? 10-minute break. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We're reconvened from our break, and that brings us to board business. Our second item, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, good morning to everyone. I wanted to, last year, we were fortunate enough as a school district, I think, to have multiple teams in the state basketball playoffs. I know one of which was Pebblebrook, and if I'm not mistaken, the other was Allatoona. Hard-fought, competitive situation. And after it was over, the head coach at Pebblebrook brought to my attention that there were some things that were less than desirable in terms of the conditions and an environment at the state basketball championship playoffs. And one of the commitments I made to him was that I would bring the issues up in terms of what seemed to plague the teams that were competing. And since then, had great conversations with, I think it was Donnie Griggers and Dr. Rivera. So we've had these conversations, Dr. Rivera, if I might, Mr. Superintendent. But can you just kind of bring us up to snuff in terms of what took place last year and what changes have ensued because of what happened last year at the state basketball tournament in Macon?
Yes, sir, Mr. Morgan. To speak briefly, there were some concerns with the facilities last year, the basketball tournament that was held in Macon. As a result of that, I could say specifically, our county athletic directors have been working closely with the GHSA to give them feedback, both on behalf of our county athletic directors, but also on behalf of our coaches. So there was an announcement made that the state basketball tournament would move to dual sites, both Athens at University of Georgia and also Georgia Tech. And additionally, I do know that the GHSA has been open to feedback on how they can really address many of the concerns. So we've been grateful for that open dialogue. And along this whole process, they've been open to input both from our two county athletic directors, Steve Jones, as well as Donnie Griggers, and also our basketball coaches.
Well, that's good to know because I want in this particular case, the head coach at Pebblebrook, George Washington, in that community to know that, the issues that they brought forth, I think they said the goals were potentially too high or things of that nature, that we did listen and that we have been communicating with Georgia High School Association. And I think I feel safe in saying that it'll be a welcomed change of venue in terms of Georgia Tech and University of Georgia. So it's good to know that those changes have happened and that communications are ongoing about ways that we can potentially stop things like that happening in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That brings us also to your second item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say that it's an annual, Chris knows this is an annual deal that typically I bring up about House Bill 251, which is a state law that was passed regarding transfers of students, families being able to transfer from one school to another school within the school district. First started this process, just to give you a laundry list of things that we have accomplished as a district. These are things that we didn't have, that we now have. So a lot of credit goes to the district. We now have a lottery, a wait list, sibling provisions, feeder patterns. We have changed how we do space in regards in relation to taking it away from the principals who and putting it in the hands of the districts, and I think that was something welcomed by most principals. We've always had hardship waivers, but now I think our hardship waiver is light years better in terms of families not feeling like they're talking to just like getting a no and you not really knowing why you got to know. And I can say all these things because now I've been a part of the process since these things have changed. So I would even go even without knowing, so it might be a bit hardy to say, but I do feel confident saying that I believe our school district has the best House Bill 251 rules and administration in the state in terms of making sure that families can access schools where they feel like their children have the best chances at learning. So kudos to the superintendent and staff on those things. One thing that I do want to bring up that I would like to ask Chris and his staff to take a look at and see how feasible it might be is the state of Georgia in this House Bill 251, does not define space. So there's a very so when you don't define something, it's left to people's interpretation. One of the things that I think, yet another way that I think that we can improve our process is this. Right now, in the district, we do not count academic trailers as space. And I feel that we should. I learned, it might have been last year, year before, Chris, I think it was Chris who said that not all trailers are used just for teaching. And, you know, I guess it's warehouses stuff and all kinds of other things that might need it for the school. But in trailers where we do have learning taking place, a teacher and students, I think we should count that as space moving forward. And here's why. Because when it comes to access, if a parent feels like, for example, I'll take a school that I know, Harmony Leland, where it currently sits, it has trailers. I think they have their 4th and 5th graders out there. Now, if a family says, you know, I want my child to go to Harmony Leland, and they full well know, hey, your child might be taught in a trailer. Okay, fine. I still want to put Harmony Leland as number 1 on the list in terms of where I want my child to access education. I feel like we should do that. I feel like that speaks to our mantra of one goal, student success. And I would like to ask or submit to the board to allow our superintendent to research the feasibility of adding academic trailers, defining that as space in administrative rule that we currently have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Scammahorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't take issue with what Mr. Morgan says. In fact, I think it might be a good idea. But I think also we need to develop criteria so that we're not adding, 2 or 3 trailers. If a trailer's already existing, then and there's space, if the board so deems it, and the superintendent, then that may be one thing. But there needs to be limits. Otherwise, we might be adding 20 trailers to a school. To not to be absurd, but to be a little absurd. So I think maybe a conversation as to parameters. And I think Mr. Morgan, with your permission, wants to respond.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy you brought that up, Mr. Scammahorn. Yes, I'm not talking about adding trailers. I'm talking about existing trailers, not, hey, I got to add 4 more trailers to a school to accommodate children. I'm saying if it's an existing trailer and there is space because it's learning taking place, that should also be that should be considered as space because that's what we're in the business of doing. And if a person was at Cheesecake Factory, sometimes they sit outside on the little deal and eat, and sometimes they sit in a restaurant. You're still eating that food, and I think the same thing with education. But I think, hey, I want my daughter to have an opportunity to go to X school, and I understand that he or she might be in a trailer, then that's something I understand going in. Not adding trailers, but merely existing trailers. If there is space, we also add that account that is space at schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
My first thought is that if you have instructional units in a portable facility, that school facility is already overburdened. So you're already overtaxing the cafeteria, the parking facilities, the media center, those types of things also, and it's causing a burden on the schools. So that's my first thought. So I don't know whether we need to Mr. Superintendent, whether you want to look into it or not, but that's that's my first thought is we're already very flexible on our policy, and when we already have a school that the whole facility is already overburdened, why continue to add to that? That's my first thought. So anyone else have any comments? Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the superintendent if he would provide to the board the criteria of how the House Bill 251 is being administered. Right now, we have policy and rules, but it doesn't tell us how the actual criteria is being administered.
Yes, sir, Mr. Banks. I'm going to ask Darrell to come up, and as he oversees this process each year and does a great job at it, and was very instrumental in helping us implement Mr. Morgan's previous comments about the changes in policy. So, Darrell, if you will, provide that information.
Yes, sir. As Mr. Morgan pointed out, we have a variety of levels of lotteries that are produced through this process when the number of applicants exceed the number of seats available. We have priorities given for siblings, students that are already in the feeder pattern. We begin the process in January and February by advertising to the general public which schools have got seats available by school, by grade level. We accept transfers for a 4-month period where the state requires only, a 4-week period. The state only requires a 2-week window for applicants, but we take applications for 4 weeks. We put all those into a system where we can then verify whether a school has exceeded the number of transfer requests that they have seats available, and if so, we do a lottery that we actually videotape and then publish on our website so the public can view that lottery process. We notify all the parents, and then they have a way to confirm that they want to accept that transfer, and if they don't accept their transfer, that will open up a seat that's available for students who are placed on a waiting list. That's another new process that we have. And so our schools work throughout the summer notifying parents on the waiting list that a seat may have become available, and then we wrap that up before school starts so that we're not moving children after the school year begins.
How do you determine available capacity?
Actually, we've done that through a multi-department approach. We first take a look at the planning and SPLOST department and what we're actually reporting to the state as the state capacity of a building. And so we're not making up a number separate from what we're already reporting to the state as the capacity. That's based primarily on a formula that the state has, but we take that information from the SPLOST department to begin with.
What do you do when the principal disagrees with your capacity number?
Well, that's the number that we're reporting to the state, so that's the official capacity of the school. One thing that we do work with the principals on is making certain adjustments. For instance, there are some programs that are housed at a school that are district-wide programs. They're not specific to that school, so we're already busing in or we're pulling in kids to that school for a specific program. That could be our IEL program, that could be a special ed program. That classroom that we report to the state is not truly available to that school because the district is using that classroom for other students. So we work with the principal to adjust those numbers when we have district-wide programs in a particular building.
Okay, I've got some additional questions, but I'll talk to you one-on-one. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Morgan? Did you have?
Yes, but it was just more, Darrell, well, Angela used to be with us, but I would also be remiss and say that, like you said, Chris, Darrell is the person who, the nuts and bolts of it. I would be very remiss if I didn't single you out in terms of how well you do this, how much more efficient this process has gotten through a lot of hard work that you have put into it. So I would be remiss in saying that, you certainly deserve a great deal of credit for where we are with this.
Thank you.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Again, I just want to second or third what Mr. Morgan said. Every year it gets a little better, and I know you, with the limited staff, you still look for ways to help our customers. And thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. York.
Yes, so my ask, for lack of a better word, is the same, is have the superintendent and his staff look at the feasibility and plausibility of academic trailers being counted as space. I mean, I feel like there's no harm in he and his staff coming back and saying yay or nay, like, hey, it does make sense, does not make sense, and this is why. But I do, in my heart of hearts, feel like, again, it gets to the issue of access, allowing people to access where they feel like their children very well might flourish the most when it comes to their education. So that is my ask, and would love to see if we might be able to accomplish that.
Mr. Morgan?
Love it.
You know that we go above and beyond to try to work with you. But on this one, man, I gotta disagree with, because we spent a lot of time this morning talking about SPLOST, and one of the main reasons for construction in SPLOST is to get rid of portable units. We have pride. We have a lot of pride in how much we have reduced, because it's my understanding, this was before I came to the district, that we had over 600 portable units at one point in time, and now we have less than 100. And that's due to SPLOST and the benefits of that. So taking that into consideration, into space for 251, really, if a school was to determine space and include portable units, it basically, and help me, Darrell, if I get off track here, but it would exacerbate the overcrowding of that school, because, again, through the changes that we've made in our House Bill 251 policies and procedures, that student stays for the entire duration of K-5 if it's at elementary school, and for 6-8 at the middle and 9-12 for the high. So while, like you mentioned, Harmony Leland, if third grade was in the portable units and they had space in one of those portable units, well, then when you get into fourth grade that's inside the building, now all of a sudden, if any growth has happened in that attendance zone, then you're kind of exacerbating. And I know that, it's easy to say that, well, we might only be talking about one or two kids, but the example I always use when we talk about this, and you know this as well as I do, is Loving Good. Everybody wants to go to Loving Good. That is the first school, correct me if I'm wrong, Darrell, but that's one of the first schools that gets shut down because of there's no space. And you mentioned, or we mentioned in the SPLOST discussion, we are going to add an addition for Loving Good. So Mr. Wheeler, you have the most popular middle school in the district, apparently. But that being said, I can't say that would be a positive move, Mr. Morgan. We'll have to agree to disagree on this one. But we will certainly come up with a,
Yes. Well, I'm not. I'm about to have a hissy fit up here because I didn't get my way.
Sorry, hissy fits are not approved.
Not approved. Okay. Well, I certainly understand where Chris is coming from about that. Now, I will say this though. I think that it's an apples and oranges comparison in this sense. Reduction of trailers and House Bill 251. If the trailers are eliminated, then that means that there was some type of capital project to eliminate it. So saying that hey, I have eight seats in the fourth grade in this trailer. I have 8 seats for academic learning. Okay, if I have 8 seats for learning in this academic trailer, and this kid happens to be in the 4th grade, right? If Jane Doe or John Doe transfers from Paulding County to Harmony Leland and is in the 4th grade, right? We're going to take that child and put him or her in that trailer, correct? In that trailer. So saying that it adds to it could potentially, or that it does burden or overburdens a particular situation, to me, I don't agree with that conclusion, to put it mildly. Again, to me, the larger issue, board, is this: access. It is about David Chastain. If you want to go to Cheesecake Factory and they say, we have seats outside, are you willing to take that? And you say yes, then you are accessing what you want. You're just eating outside. And to me, when it comes to parents and education, if I want to access something at Loving Good, Harmony Leland, King Springs, and I know that it could very well be outside, I think it's in the district's best interest to count that as space, as opposed to just saying the brick and mortar is what we count. Now, even though we do have learning outside, we don't count that. I think that, in my mind, is not. I think that reasonable minds can disagree, but I think that it is in the best interest of students and parents to say that if learning is taking place in a particular area and it is outside in a trailer, ma'am or sir, you can access that if you are chosen in House Bill 251. We're not going to say no, we're not counting that, but we are counting everything inside. So I think that it behooves us to move in that direction, to at least consider it, to look at it and see how many. Last thing I'll quickly say is this, Madam Chair. When it comes to the issue of space, I don't know if I expressed it strongly enough or not, but the district has done a great job of improving how we count space. Because if I'm not mistaken, Chris, you told me that when we transitioned it more from just a principal-led situation to more of a district-led, we found 45% more space. And I think that and I might just be making that number up out of thin air, but I think okay, we found more space. So I think this is yet another way. We talked about improving books, improving SPLOST, and I think this is a way that we can improve House Bill 251. And at very minimum, I think it's something we should at least explore and come back and see what happens.
Well, and to that point, let me say, too, that when we did change the formula, because we did that to try to remove the principal from being the middleman, because the principals have too much pressure on their plate anyway. But what we tried to do is go in and say, okay, we applied a formulaic approach. But one of the flip side of that coin that came out is some of the schools that were saying they had space and trying to accommodate HB 251 students, when we applied the formula, their space was reduced. So we had some schools, legitimately trying to, to say they had space that really did not, by the definition of space. So it did go both ways. So anyway.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if local communities are going to support keeping trailers on their campuses for out-of-district kids. To me, the trailers indicate that we've got overcrowding situations, and now you're going to bring in kids from all over the place into a local school. I mean, I just don't see that as a feasible thing to do. If there is space, that's a different matter. And the second part of that is, once those trailers are there, you're not going to be able to get rid of them because that space will continue to be there. So you're going to have schools with trailers all over the place that are highly selected schools, and others won't work. I don't know if that's the answer.
Mr. Morgan.
I think it's worth noting to Mr. Wheeler's points that what I'm not saying, Brad, is that you keep trailers in perpetuity. Just because I'm not saying that if you have 5 trailers at Harmony Leland, right? And let's say in those 5 trailers, you got 4 additional seats that children can access. I'm not saying add more trailers or that they're going to stay in perpetuity, but let's just say you had 4 additional seats that families could access currently at Harmony Leland. I think that we should count that as space because there are 4 seats. And teaching and learning is taking place there. I'm not saying add it, and it does not bog us down saying, well, now we have to keep trailers because we have House Bill 251 kids. That's not the intent, and that's not how it would be actualized. I'm merely saying is currently, if there is space, count those seats as space in your numbers, as opposed to saying we're not counting those 4 seats. Count those 4 seats, and then we could as opposed to how we're doing it now. So I just don't want you or anyone else to have the wrong interpretation of what I'm asking in this particular situation.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Morgan has asked that this be studied. Is there interest on the board that this be studied? If there is, please raise your hand that you would like to have this issue studied. So there are 3 others that are not interested. You're interested in having this issue studied. 3 of you are.
What's the harm, Madam Chair? Madam Chair, may I be recognized? I don't know if we can come up with a viable solution, but what's the harm in looking at an idea? I mean, I don't. Somebody explain that to me. Thank you.
Mr. Chastain.
Okay. I guess I'm confused as exactly what we're going to study, but I would appreciate maybe understanding better the process and who owns what piece of the process, what's House Bill 251, what is, I understand principals can, or at least I thought they could hold back seats for teacher, what do we call it, dependent transfers or whatever. I mean, I can't sit here and grasp the whole thing at once, so if it was just, let's lay it out and explain how we do it now, I'd be for that. I don't know if it's a study or just maybe getting a better, okay.
Mr. York,
let me start.
All right, Mr. Ragsdale.
The process was, at one point in time, schools just reported what available space they had. Thanks, have a good day. That was it. So what we did is that as the board became interested in modifying our policies and procedures and admin rules to make different accommodations such that, feeder patterns and siblings and waiting lists and these kind of things, we did modify the process about how we identified and reported available space. Darryl went and met with every single principal in the district. So obviously this took a while. He took a floor plan. He mapped out how each school was utilizing classroom space. Because, for example, if you have a special ed classroom where you've got 5 students in it, that is the utilization of that classroom. You can't count it for FTE space for capacity when that's the utilization of that classroom, because it's going to look like you're under capacity when in fact you're not. So Darryl, if you will just, kind of take us through how, once you did that process, like I said, some schools went up, some schools went down in available space.
Sure, yes, sir. We took that facility study. We also took a look at the instructional units in every school, and the state has basically a table that if a high school, for instance, has so many IUs, instructional units, this is their range of capacity, and we took the higher of that range, and that's what we started off with. We then looked at projected enrollment. We took work from our accountability office to look at what the projected enrollment would be for next year, and then determine how many seats would be available. We then did use principal input to divide those seats among grade levels. The state does not divide up a particular middle school by 3 grade levels, so we did gather input from the principal. How many do you project at each grade level? How many seats would you have based upon this total number that we used? We then did children of employee transfers, which is something new. We had not done that before. In the past, we did House Bill 251, and then employees just kind of piled on top of that. And so we've tried to use those numbers for all of our transfer purposes to ensure that we're not overcrowding a school and forcing, either too many kids in a classroom or having to have additional portables and that type of thing. So it's a step-by-step process. We start with that capacity. We'll be doing that again probably starting in October of this year. We'll start looking at projections for next year based on this year's enrollment, based on the work Mr. Wilson's team does and provides to our accountability office. And then we'll work through that process pretty much from October to the end of the year.
I'm not really sure where to go here. Mr. Morgan.
Yes. For the time being, Madam Chair, for the purposes of this conversation, I think that you took a vote. We did not have a majority. And at this particular time, I think, that it's, I'll try to talk to some of my colleagues offline about this particular matter. But I think for the time being, we've had a thorough conversation about it.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Maybe we all can. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report. Mr. Ragsdale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, we have had a busy week and a half. School started last Monday, and we had a tremendous start to the school year. And we have, as we always do, we have a first day of school video to show you. And she's going to get tired of hearing it, but Donna Lowry, who's now sitting back there at the table, continues to do an awesome job. But I know you will agree when you see our video that's better than anybody else's video. So, we can roll the video. So you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right. Yeah. There you go, man. There you go.
Ready. There was never any doubt about that. Not just here at Loving Good Middle School with Principal Angela Stewart at the helm.
See, our teachers, we don't have one team, one goal shirts, but we are one team.
Superintendent Chris Ragsdale visited a few schools to let them know he's grateful for the entire district team as they start a new school year of focus on student success.
Every bit of success that we receive as a district is because of the hard work that the teachers do, and we have the best teachers in the world.
Good. Then on to the Hollywood focus at Still Elementary with Principal Grace Scarberry.
You just didn't know that you had the most famous teachers of all the entire district.
Here, not only the teachers, but the students are stars. On to Hillgrove High School with Principal Christian Settle.
How are you?
And teens in a forensics class roped into a lesson on logic. All in all, a day to celebrate the anticipation of a new school year. From the buses arriving, to the hallway navigating, to the teachers instructing.
The level of excitement of teachers, that speaks a lot to the students.
We are in forensics where they have to use logic skills.
Because they see that the teachers are there and united and that they care about their future.
Paul, we should be so.
That's our message is we have to prepare them for whatever path that they choose.
With Cobb Ed TV, I'm Director of Communications, Donna Lowry.
So obviously, it was a great first day, great video, but here's the message that I want to leave everybody with. That was the first day, and as soon as the bell rang on the first day, we were teaching and learning. That's the message, is day one, our teachers were doing what they do best, and our students were learning. The forensics class, that was day one, so it was truly an awesome day. I can't say thank you enough to the teachers for all of the hard work that they did in planning and preparing for the start of the school year. It goes without saying that it's an anxious time when you start to school. And like I said, I forget, I think it was Mary Kate that quoted me in this. There's not a family in the world that doesn't have some level of anxiety when the first day of school hits, regardless of what level their student is going into. So it was exciting. I was at Loving Good. It was exciting to see the parents and the students coming in. And again, I can't say thank you enough to all of our teachers, but all of our staff as well. The bus drivers, again, that's the first face that a lot of our students see, over 75,000 of our students, which is a very high ridership. So transportation is extremely important to our district in ensuring that all of our kids arrive safe to school and back home. So it was just an awesome first day. It's been an awesome first week. Of course, we're going to have hurdles. We're going to have growing pains. The enrollment has grown, and we're expecting it to continue to grow. Again, going back to our demographic study, that's why we update that every year, because working on old data does not benefit anyone. And as you saw in the video, just a lot of excitement with everyone, our staff, especially our principals and teachers alike. So thank you to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was from all indications, it was a tremendously smooth opening, and that says a lot for our principals, our central office staff, and everyone. So, all right, this brings us to our board agenda items. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board, agenda item number 1 is the monthly item that we have for disposal of assets from the district per administrative rule DO-R, and that's been electronically delivered to all the board members.
Is it okay if we consent agenda? Okay. We'll move that to consent.
For agenda item number 2 and 3, I will ask Mr. John Adams to come and present those.
Good morning again. Agenda item number 2, recommendation to approve an easement for Georgia Power Company at Fair Oaks Elementary School. Georgia Power is requesting easement at Fair Oaks to hook up power to portables on the property. Easement consists of about 3,600 square feet. We're recommending that you approve this recommendation for the easement to Georgia Power at Fair Oaks at no cost to the district, which is necessary for providing power to 2 portables at Fair Oaks. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, consent. Okay, thank you. Next.
Item number 3, recommendation for approval of architect appointment for the Harmony Leland Elementary School, Clay Elementary School replacement facility. Once again, in accordance with our rules on architectural and engineering services, it's time to appoint an architect for this project, the Harmony Leland Elementary, Clay Elementary replacement facility. Superintendent's recommending that you appoint Cunningham, Forehand, Matthews, and Moore out of Atlanta, Georgia, as the architect for this project, and authorize the superintendent to execute the contract. The cost of this are in accordance with our board rules on the topic. 5% of the estimated construction budget, or in this case, $1.5 million that you see listed. The budgeted costs will be paid for from the general funds that have previously been committed. All architectural costs will be reimbursed to the general fund by SPLOST 5, but no architectural work will commence unless and until SPLOST 5 passes. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Mr. Morgan.
I do want to say, it's not a question, Madam Chair, but I do want to say that, again, it might be in the elephant in the room to some, but I think is yet another sign, proof positive sign, when you are appointing an architect, if it passes, of our commitment to that entire situation. So I hope if anybody's listening, especially in the Harmony Leland Clay community, they see the board taking yet another proof positive step for this school.
Yeah, there's been a lot of misinformation represented out there, and I'm going to say that as politely as I can, because the board has taken a direct path to get Harmony Leland rebuilt, and the misinformation I'm talking about is the timeline. Bringing this architectural appointment today basically shows the commitment of the board to this project. And it's my recommendation to bring the architect because it's going to be, just as we identified, for example, in SPLOST 4, we identified Teasley, Wheeler, and Walton as the first 3 projects coming out of the gate. The Harmony Leland rebuild is going to be one of the first projects coming out of the gate in SPLOST 5. So it is that. We are committed to that process. And again, being able to take advantage of the funds previously committed to go ahead and appoint the architect, assuming SPLOST 5 referendum passes, assuming the board passes the resolution in October, assuming the public passes the referendum in March of 2017, then Harmony-Leland will be one of the first projects coming out of the gate. What this does by appointing the architect now is allows us to go ahead and have the planning done prior to SPLOST 5 funds being collected, such that as soon as the SPLOST 5 timeline hits, then we're ready, shovel-ready project, as the term was used coined a few years ago, such that it's not, well, SPLOST 5 revenues have started, and we've got to wait for them to build up and these kind of things. We'll be ready with the project to go come the first month of SPLOST 5. So, again, it should alleviate any hesitation, questions, et cetera, of the Harmony-Leland community that this project is going to happen. And this is the most expedient way for that school to get rebuilt. And I think that's what you're alluding to. That's the misinformation I was alluding to, is that, oh, well, it's going to be, year 4 or year 5 in SPLOST. It'll be 10 years from now and these kind of things. So that's just not the case. I'm saying right now that, SPLOST 5 passes. The Harmony-Leland rebuild is going to be one of the first projects coming out of the gate in SPLOST 5.
Mr. Scammahorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure if the parliamentarian might want to have an opinion on this, but since the funds are already there and there's no SPLOST funds involved until SPLOST 5, I would have no objections of it just being a consent item.
Well, the only comment I would have is I saw one board member shaking his head, and that would prevent it from going on to consent agenda. But that's up to the board.
Is there an objection to consent?
I would object because the F&T committee needs to evaluate this also, since it will be eventually a SPLOST item.
Well, we can put on discussion.
I have no comment, but the fact that we approve it doesn't mean that they can't review it, but I'm okay with it, Madam Chair. Thank you. I was just trying to expedite the process.
Right. We'll just put it on discussion then, if that's okay. All right, anything else? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. We appreciate that.
You want to go ahead and do the rules?
Yeah, since we're ahead of schedule a little bit, we'll go ahead, Mr. York, and do our rules.
I feel like John Adams getting called up so much today. Thank you.
I know. Getting your exercise here.
Good hair day. Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, you've received 4 administrative rules for your 10-day review, and I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? No? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. We appreciate it. Okay. Well, then we will adjourn into executive session and lunch, and we will return.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Scammahorn.
What are we adjourning for? Land, legal, and personnel?
No land. Legal and personnel.
Just legal and personnel. Okay, legal and personnel. And then 12:30 return?
Yeah. Do we need a motion?
I don't know that it will be quite that long. It will be some period of time.
All right. So motion to go into executive session and return at noon.
That's correct.
Move second. Okay. So we are adjourned to executive session. A vote. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. All right. We are going into executive session, planning to return at noon. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We're reconvened after lunch and executive session, and I will turn it over to our superintendent, Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Mr. John Adams to bring items requiring action following executive session. And remember, there'll be 3 items in total to vote on today.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Ragsdale. I'm pleased to present the Human Resources Personnel Report for today, August 10th, 2016. Our first item, the administration recommends the approval of the identified employment actions of those individuals listed on the personnel report as discussed in executive session, and we do not have any principal level or higher position recommendations.
Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we accept the report as stated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Chastain seconds. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Yes, ma'am. As our next item, there's a motion that the board accept the recommendation of the tribunal to non-renew the teaching contract of Arunma Abuagu for the 2016-17 school year for incompetency, insubordination, willful neglect of duties, and any other good and sufficient cause.
Motion? Mr. Scamahorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we accept the recommendation as stated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Morgan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
And then for our third and final item, there is a motion to approve the settlement agreement and release with Mary Finlayson, which includes a settlement in the amount of $24,406.69 to Mary Finlayson and $25,593.31 in attorney fees. This will conclude the litigation in this matter.
Thank you. I so move. Is there a second? Mr. Scamahorn seconds. Discussion. All those in favor? Again, unanimous. Thank you. Is there any other business, Mr. Superintendent?
The approval of the agenda is the only thing.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Wheeler seconds. Any other discussion on the agenda for our voting session? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All right, then it is unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to board comments. We'll start with Mr. Wheeler.
So when banks come back, you can't do it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple items. First off, I was the honor of attending Varner Elementary School on opening day and had the unique experience of talking on a teleprompter when they did morning announcements. That's pretty cool. And second, had the pleasure of attending the McEachern Athletic Booster Club kickoff on Saturday. And it was a great community event. A lot of folks there out supporting the programs, and they're off to a great year too. So it's good news out there.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know this might sound like a broken record, but Chris, I have to again thank somebody on your staff, man. I mean, I don't know how it compares to other board members, but I get a lot of the calls I get is when people are not happy, right? Disenchanted about something. But I have to really give a lot of thanks to John Adams, because I was alerted on Facebook about an issue with the girls' softball field at South Cobb High School. And I agreed. I said I would go out there and walk the field with them. And the Saturday that we went out there, one of the issues that they had were the dugouts. And they were, unbeknownst to the president of the Booster Club and myself, they were actually, I heard about it that week. That Saturday, they were putting up those dugouts. And I think that says a lot about responsiveness. And it also speaks to what I believe. People typically judge a school district based upon their experience. It's not. And when you see that, when you see those type of wins, especially in the south part of our school district, I think that, again, it's just a real building block or where people can hang their hats about how we truly care about every part of this school district. John, I appreciate that and the responsiveness and how receptive everyone has been about fixing things that's wrong with that. And I'm just on cloud nine, and so are the people who are a part of the South Cobb community, especially South Cobb High School. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. First, I want to say, in case the board doesn't know, but obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to Alice Stouter. Her mom passed away last night, so certainly we want to be thinking about her and her family. You know, I just can't say enough about the opening of school. It was very smooth, and it was because every team member was playing their part to 110%. And it just goes without saying, but it's worth saying every chance we get that we've got a great team. We do, as you heard me saying in the video, we've got the best teachers in the world, and I'm going to keep saying it, that we got Don Lowry and nobody else does, and that's awesome. So, thank you.
I think we're all going to be on somewhat the same thing, but it really is, you know, it's like putting your house on the market. It's the first open house kind of thing. What it takes to open a school system and open it smoothly is phenomenal, from our maintenance department that works so consistently to make sure that we're ready for the first day, to even the volunteers that are out there putting pine straw out, and our transportation department where we let kindergartners ride the buses so that they're not afraid the first day, to our meet and greets before school starts, and principals who work all summer to make sure we're ready, and our teachers who've gotten beautiful rooms. Everyone plays a part so that we have a great opening. Our central office staff that works throughout the summer to make sure we're ready. So for everyone, and to all of our new teachers, we welcome you and hope that you have a wonderful career with us. So to everyone, we appreciate what you did to make this a very special opening, and we hope that it's just the beginning of another wonderfully successful school year. Thank you. Mr. Chastain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gosh, there's not much I can add, except I do want to echo the thanks, though, to the superintendent and his staff, and just with all the things that we covered in the earlier part of the meeting today, how smoothly it went and how questions were answered. So I'm really appreciative of the feedback. And now we're just going to go have a great year in Post 4. Thank you.
Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bus. This year, the first day of school, I did my annual bus ride. This year, I rode with 14-year veteran Kathy Wells, whose son was Lance Corporal Skip Wells, who was murdered in Chattanooga. We started out at J.J. Daniel, went over to and picked up for Bell's Ferry, and then we picked up for Sprayberry, and then we picked up for J.J. Daniel. That finished the morning. And that afternoon, the buses started really filling up because we made the same routes that afternoon. But I want to thank Miss Wells for allowing me to ride with her this year. And we do have some fantastic bus drivers. I'll tell you what, they're an enthusiastic bunch. They really bond with the kids, and the kids really appreciate the bus drivers and what they do for them. Also want to say that Eastside Elementary School has made a change. They are no longer the Tigers. They have changed to the Eagles. So now they're the Eastside Eagles. Hope High School has got a tremendous amount of construction work going on. The site work is still in progress, and I think it's getting fairly close to being finished, so they'll start pouring the slab pretty soon. And also, they changed their scrimmage football game from Friday night to Thursday night, and there is walkways up to the field along the back side of the school, and there's on the really back side which is on the west side of the school. I think there's going to be a walkway up to the stadium from there also. And also I want to compliment Winter's Construction. They have done a fabulous job of getting the school renovations, internal renovations done. They've moved a lot of walls. They've tore down a lot of walls. They've put up a lot of walls. And they've done a fantastic job, and the administration really compliments them. If you've gone down Sandy Plains Road lately, you'll see a Mountain View rebuild going on. Most of the site work has been done, and I think they're started to pour in the slabs and coming up with some steel now. So that school is moving right along. Also, I will say what was said earlier about the schools, about the teachers. We do have some fantastic teachers, and I had pleasure of going to Mountain View Sneak a Peek Friday before school started, and there was a huge number of parents there. That cafeteria was overflowing with parents and kids. And I also had the opportunity to meet one of the teachers who actually went to Mountain View. So we do have quite a few teachers that actually went to Cobb County schools, and sometimes, like in Mountain View, they actually went to the school they're teaching in now. Also, I want to say you got the Walton video? Okay. Walton High School, it's mammoth. It's huge. Here you're seeing a picture of what the atrium looks like. It's way up in the air. This is a 4-story building. The walls are coming up. I've got some more pictures other than this, but this is the one that I'm showing. Walton has got, it's unbelievable how fast this thing is moving. And also, I want to say that Leicester will be having their scrimmage game Friday night at Leicester. So I hope everybody will turn out for that. And also, I think Pope and Leicester have refurbished tracks. I'm not sure the stripes are down yet, but I think the asphalt or whatever it is down and ready to go. So that's my comments for the day. Thank you, Madam.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And about 12, 13 other high schools will be waiting our atrium like that for Walton. So just a modest little thing. I would like to ask a question of our televising staff or Ms. Lowry. Was that a new video or when we started our telecast, that the opening? It wasn't. It looked a little different. That's why I wanted to ask. Same thing? Okay.
There were two versions. That was the second version. It was a shorter version. You may have had a chance to look at the first version.
Okay. Well, it looked good. So something looked different about it. So, but anyway, thank you. It looked real well. I'd like to also echo the opening school went so smoothly. I got, I think, 2 emails on a couple of minor things and 2 or 3 calls, which were quickly handled or being handled. And I've told several groups out in the communities that each year it gets better. So next year I'm anticipating no emails and no calls. So it's just a reflection on the staff, period, and how you are customer-oriented and stepping up, proactive. It just, there's not enough words. So hopefully we can keep our fingers crossed and keep it going. And then finally, the number may be off 1 or 2 because it rises so quickly, but I'm going to shoot a number to everybody. 35 officers have been killed this year alone. 35. And you know what's really sad is, yes, their suffering is done, but they left families, little kids, and friends, communities, all because they took an oath to serve their community. It is absolutely and will continue to be unacceptable and abhorrent as to what some people are doing and trying to do to our communities and to this nation. And with that, I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. One thing we probably should have said also is that there was a great deal of construction this summer. Much of our community should have seen a lot of SPLOST 4 projects going on. So you saw your SPLOST dollars at work throughout our community. So again, if there is, Mr. Scammahorn.
Forgot one quick thing on the end of that. Take a cop to lunch, shake his or her hand, let them know that we appreciate them, and hang in there. Better times are coming, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.